What's up, everybody? Late night Keefe. I know I swore I wasn't going to do another late night one of these, but here we are. Um, Seems like we're live everywhere but Instagram. Again, having trouble with Instagram since I got a new computer set up recently. I'm trying to remove Instagram and put it back and see what happens, but it doesn't seem to be working, and I don't know why. Screen key. Save the changes. Tell it to go live. But all right, we'll see what happens. Maybe it'll come on. Anywho, why are we here? It's been a tough week in the music world, and I have been thinking a lot about death, a topic I think about a lot. Doesn't make me a hit at parties. I told a very poor joke at dinner with my girlfriend's family this last weekend about making my family die from laughter. I thought it was very funny. Some people laughed, some people didn't. It's okay. Um, Drop a comment and tell us what is the worst celebrity or rock, specifically music, like in your life. What is the musician that died that hurt the most? I will engage with you. I will. This is not. This is purely just a rundown. There's been a bunch of deaths this week in the music world, and I found it to be, I find all these things to be hard. I've had a lot of death personally. Ghost Cult has lost some staffers over the years that have been very near and dear to my heart, and it's always hard. But this is the genre, this is the thing we love, right? Music, and there's been celebrity deaths, and there's been pop culture people who pass away, but I want to know what is your, whether you watch this live right now or you check the podcast out when this is a podcast tomorrow or Friday or the next day. Drop a comment and share memory of the pain you felt. Maybe cathartically we'll all release it all. It's been hard for me. There's been so many, and there's been so many. I'm fond of saying death is undefeated. It never loses. So with that in mind, I made a deck here, and I'm going to add it here, and I'm still on the other side of this thing a little. So let's move this guy here a little bit. So we did this, the worst deaths in rock and metal, and I'm going to start off by talking about the ones that personally affected me, right? And again, I'm Keefe from GhostCultMag.com. Chances are this is your first time watching with us. Matt Williams is here, and Colette is here, and Voya is here, and Thrashman is here, and we're talking about the worst deaths in rock and metal, and maybe a few that aren't rock and metal at the end. But I want to hear from you. Tell me who has been the worst one for you, and I'll share mine. The most closest ones to my heart are toward the beginning of this, but this is quite a long list. You could just add to this forever. Tom Petty. Tom Petty is on our list, of course. I never saw Tom Petty. Really sad. Great guy and very young, 54. But we'll talk about that in a second. So this photo is actually of Dimebag Darrell. When he was, you guys on TikTok are not getting to see this. If you want to join on YouTube and hop in the comments, but either way, I'll engage with everybody here. I cannot seem to get Instagram to unfuck itself, so we're still not going live on the gram. That's a bummer because we always pull in a nice group of people there. But okay, the gram is just a struggle. Anywho, so Dimebag Darrell, this is a tough one for me personally, and if you're watching here, just before we get started, as always, there's a tip menu. You can tip us if you want to. Ghost Cult Mag is a not corporate entity, and so we appreciate tips for service. And I'm doing this on top of everything else in my busy life. I had sworn last week I wasn't going to do another late night live stream. I'm really trying to get my sleeping habits better together, but so far, no dice. But anyway, I'll put our tip menu in the comments on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Feel free to subscribe. We will subscribe back and follow you back. And But tomorrow or later today, in about 16 hours, is our usual weekly rock and metal news live stream, and we'll talk about the deaths this week specifically, and we'll talk about some birthdays, and we'll talk about some metal festivals and some rock tours that got announced, and interviews we did here on our YouTube this week and on our podcasts, and all the things, and probably share and unbox some cool stuff too, because we like to do that. You know. Yeah, absolutely, man. Tom Petty's a rocker, bro. He's absolutely a rocker. But anyway, with that out of the way, let's talk a bit about these deaths, and I'm going to talk specifically about the ones kind of close to me. And I'll Dimebag. This is a photo of our from our own Evil Rob. He's got a few in here, and the Dimebag. Oh, no problem, Thrashman. Thanks for joining in. It's no worries. I appreciate you. Amber is here also. And GGG Ewone is here. I don't know how to say that, pal. Galvin is here. So, yeah, man, Dimebag really broke me. I remember where I was when he died. He was murdered on stage. Just an absolute horror of a thing to have happen to a person. Lead Belly was apparently shot in a concert and walked it off somehow. Lead Belly, ergo the name. Maybe it's a fiction, maybe it's not. But Dime was murdered along with a bunch of people at the concert, security, other people were injured. It's a miracle more people weren't killed. It's hard to believe that is 21 years ago. Oh my God. Like, thanks for being here, Raven, also, and Jay Fields. Like, yeah, man, just terrible. I wasn't there. I saw Damage Plan the week before Dimebag was murdered. So Damage Plan played New York City about 8 days before he was killed with Shadows Fall. And they were fucking great. And I met Vinnie, and I had a chance to meet Dime, and I had met other members of Pantera in the past. And Dimebag was mobbed by people, and I was like, yo, I'll see you next time. And I hung out with Vinnie for a minute. He gave me a big hug, and I thanked him for coming back with Damage Plan. And I was like, I'll see him next time. And there was no next time. So I've been very fortunate. I saw Pantera a ton of times as a younger guy. And I've seen the newer version of Pantera, whatever you want to call it, the tribute to Pantera with Philip and Rex and Charlie Benante and Zach. And I thought they did a great job. I do not want new music from Pantera under that name, but that's an episode for another time. In addition to the passing of Dimebag, obviously, not quite as tragic, but still tragically young. Vinnie Paul passed away a few years ago. This is another picture by Evil Rob when Vinnie was with Hell Yeah. We have some exclusive photos on our website of Vinnie and Dime, like behind the scenes stuff from before they passed. And, Vinnie was never the same guy. And you wouldn't be either if your brother was, lost like that in a horrible murder. It really shook metal. I mean, this is insane, but a lot of stuff has happened. A lot of stuff. Super sad. And then the brothers are buried side by side in Arlington near Dallas. I believe this is not the most recent photo of the gravesite, but this is a photo that was sent in to us, and they had to put like a protective covering over it because people were like defacing the gravestones. I think people just don't know how to act. Especially since the plague, people don't know how to act. But yeah, man, the murder of Dimebag hurt me very badly. And again, this first batch of ones, I think most people will relate to all of them, and some of them are very personally hurtful to me. And then I'm going to open it up to a more wide general list. But the first whole bunch of these, more than half of the list, is ones you should all know. Obviously, Lemmy. This is a photo I took of Lemmy. I shot Motorhead 3 times. I don't do concert photography anymore, but I'm too busy editing the website and posting news and stuff like that. But thanks for following, Cyberman. Appreciate you. And James is here again. If you want to contribute and drop a comment with the rock or metal or music, just in general, music death that hurt you the most, let us know what it is. Lemmy, this hurt me. I was so sad about Lemmy. We covered Motorhead a bunch. I was lucky enough to see Motorhead a bunch of times. I photographed Motorhead. This is a Mayhem Fest, and on the second stage. I use this photo a lot when talking about Motorhead. And, I'm really proud that I got to see Motorhead, with full power. Chuck is in our list, man. Absolutely, Chuck. Man, what another one to talk about. It's coming up in a few slides. Absolutely have to talk about Chuck. And some more recent Chuck news, actually. Cliff Burton, these are exclusive photos that Ghost Cult has access to via Michael Alago. Perhaps you're familiar with him. Michael Alago is the guy who signed Metallica to Elektra Records. He helped make White Zombie into a monster before Rob Zombie went solo. These are private photos that Michael shared with us when we interviewed him the first time. And Michael was the A&R rep, and he signed Metallica, and he worked on the big major records with them, the first 4. And then went on to another record company. But, he had a personal relationship with Cliff and all the members of Metallica, and he's still friends with the rest of them. Cliff is a huge hero of mine as a bassist. I sang and play bass for a long time, and can't tell you how many hours I learned to play these Cliff bass lines and try to, perform. Eric Carr, man, same thing. Yeah, I was actually going to bring that up. I don't have an Eric Carr photo, but absolutely Eric Carr. Gutting. Freddy is coming up in here too. Cliff just died tragically in the infamous bus accident. Glad that Metallica kind of pays tribute to Cliff at every show and a lot of things that they do. There's a Cliff Burton Day here in the Bay Area where Cliff is from. Every February 10th on Cliff's birthday is Cliff Burton Day in the Castro Valley. And go look on YouTube for Cliff Burton Day and you'll see like the latest stuff. Every year there's kind of a celebration, and this year one of his sister was there. Really cool. Lane Staley, and also in this photo is Mike Starr. Alice in Chains, one of my absolute favorite bands, and this is just another terrible tragedy. Just a brutal loss. I love Alice in Chains. They're easily in my top 3 bands, and Lane is one of the greats of all time, and I do love that Alice in Chains has continued, and I love that they found a way to move forward, and Alice in Chains has continued with William Duvall, and Jerry Cantrell's kind of relaunched his solo career to a lot more success now, and does a lot of Alice in Chains in his live show with Greg Puciato from formerly of Dillinger Escape Plan and of Better Lovers and the Black Queen and stuff. And Greg is an incredible singer, and he does great justice to Lane, as does William. So much, man. I really never came back from that one either. And then, Mike Starr is also in this photo, so really bad, really sad. And then, of course, Dio, maybe the greatest metal singer ever in terms of pure vocal ability and talent. I highly recommend the Dio book and documentary, Dreamers Never Die. It's kind of funny. I think mainstream people were not really aware of Dio. So metalheads love Dio and know Rainbow and know Black Sabbath with Dio. And I was really an Ozzy person, and I was really angry that Ozzy was fired, and I was sort of team Ozzy at 10 years old or whatever, 8, 9, 10 years old when Ozzy went solo. And but I love Dio. I got to see Dio, and I'm really appreciative that I made a concerted effort in the 90s to check his solo band out and enjoy and appreciate him, because he was magical live. I do feel like now mainstream metalheads, because of streaming, because of these events hailing Ronnie and these cancer charity events that help raise money in his name, I think there's a tremendous great new awareness of Dio that maybe there wasn't when he died, because I still feel like he was somehow an underground guy most of his career. But yeah, man, I love Heaven and Hell also. Thrashman, you fucking rule. Thank you so much for your contributions here, pal. So yeah, Dio, Jeff Hanneman of Slayer, second member of the big 4 bands to pass, and obviously also, his drinking had been a problem, and perhaps if he had, had gotten his drinking and alcoholism under control, he might not have. I know, bro. I know. I'm breaking my own heart, man. This is why I'm doing this. It's a little bit of, I have therapy tomorrow afternoon. I probably should have waited till after this, but I said right at the top before you tuned in, Thrashman, that I hope maybe all of us together can let go of our grief cathartically. So Jeff passed away. I was lucky to see Slayer a lot, and I've seen Slayer with Jeff, with Jeff and Gary, and I've seen Slayer with all their drummers, including John Detty. And I know a lot of people feel like Slayer wasn't the same when Jeff passed, and I don't think there was a notion that Jeff wouldn't come back until he passed. I think they expected him to return, to get well, to get his strength back. I know he suffered the flesh-eating bacteria is an extremely metal way to go and a terrible way to go, extremely painful. He was kind of not into doing the skin grafts, but there was a hope that he could, rehab and get his strength back and return. So, I don't think until he passed they envisioned going on without him. But once he passed, they had a choice to make, and they made it. And Gary is great, and the Slayer return has been great. Ghost Cult has been a part of it. We covered the very first Slayer comeback concert at Riot Fest last year, and gave away VIP tickets to the weekend. And we were quoted in the original press release touting Slayer's return, that the world had turned to shit since they were gone, and now they came back. And I know that people are very cynical and bands don't stay broken up, but I'm glad somebody today is going to discover Slayer and then go backwards and buy all the records and become a diehard fan. And yeah, really, really caught them off guard. And I know there's some sadness there from those guys too. I don't see it purely money is the reason for everything. It's very easy to be cynical, but Slayer is also their band, just like Pantera is Philip and Rex's band too. They lost Darrell and Vinnie, but that's also their band. So should they not have a band anymore? There's plenty of bands out here with no original members. Foreigner has almost no original members. I'll talk about it tomorrow in the live stream for the news show. I saw a video of the new Black Flag lineup. Ugh, God. Not good. So, no shade to anybody who is carrying on and trying to have a career without their, band members. Overkill, indeed. I love Overkill. Cornell, man, here's another one. Chris Cornell, just absolutely brutal. I know exactly where I was when he died. Suicide is horrible, and we'll talk a lot about that. I've had some suicide very close to me, friends. People who worked with us at Ghost Cult. Cornell, just brutal when Cornell died. Just absolutely, just positively robbed of how great he is. I'm really glad that Soundgarden got in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I'm really glad that the lawsuit between his second wife and the remaining band members is over, and there will be the final Soundgarden album released. We will get new Chris Cornell solo material, maybe a box set of vinyls or something. He apparently had a lot of material in the can for a new record, unplugged and electric. So, and as great a voice as Chris Cornell had, an unbelievable, earth-shattering voice, he's an incredible songwriter and guitar player. And I don't think enough people talk about that. And in my opinion, more people should talk about that. I want to just give a shout out again to everybody watching. That's some people watching on the Tube of You, some people here on TikTok, some on Twitch. I could not get the Insta to go for the second time. Tomorrow we'll try again. And then, of course, you can't talk about Cornell without Chester. And even if you're not a fan of Linkin Park, it's hard to calculate how huge as a second wave nu metal band and rock band Linkin Park became one of the best-selling bands of all time, of the last 25 years. No surprise that they were able to put out a version of the band and come back to headline arenas and stadiums around the world and headline festivals, which is nothing short of remarkable on the strength of this potent band and Chester's beautiful soul. And him and Cornell were very close, and it's widely accepted that maybe Chester killed himself on Cornell's birthday, which is 2 months after Cornell died, which is just absolutely fucking brutal. I think there were AA and rehab buddies, and maybe Cornell was Chester's sponsor. So if Cornell fell off the wagon and then unalived himself, what hope Chester would have lost, like so sad. And he left behind 6 kids. And I know that his second wife and his kid is kind of a hot mess, constantly throwing shade. And I think he expected to be the new Linkin Park singer or something. And he seems unwell and needs to take care of his mental well-being and health. But this is a wonderful photo of Chester when he was fronting Stone Temple Pilots, which I also photographed them. This is shot by my good friend Meg Loyal Photography out of LA. And I saw Chester with STP, and Weiland was his favorite singer. Weiland is on this list also. Another tragedy. But yeah, man, Chester, it's a tough one, man. It's a real tough one. I understand, like, aside from the political things with, the choice of singer, I think, like, oh, how could they go on without Chester? Linkin Park wasn't Chester's band in the first place. He joined late. It certainly was his band. He made it his band, but he wasn't the founder of the band. It was always Mike's band. And again, I don't fault them for trying to pick up the pieces and move on and have a band again, but some people do. I understand if you just can't accept them without Chester, but I think it's good for music to have the band back. Phil Lynott, man, Philo from Thin Lizzy, easily the most underrated person on this entire list, probably, and a band that should have been so much bigger. They never really got to be huge in America the way Queen and Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath did. And Thin Lizzy is much more than you hear the same 3 or 4 songs that you know from rock radio. But Thin Lizzy is an incredible band with an iconic original sound. Phil is one of the greatest singers and songwriters ever to live. He's an incredible bass player and beautiful lyricist, great singer, and very well gone before too long, like lost before his time. I think had he lived, we would have got like some newer version of Thin Lizzy in the 90s and the 2000s where he would have gotten everything he would have deserved, because he really deserves to be talked about like Led Zeppelin and Freddy and Queen, and like really, really underrated, really unheralded. And a lot of people just know the big hits, which are wonderful songs. I appreciate that Metallica plays Whiskey in the Jar all the time, and that puts money in his family's pockets, but his daughters who are grown now. But like, such a great band and so underrated, and so so many more great songs than what you've heard before. Like, go explore those records, especially that middle period, like 73 to like 83. Man, that's the time. Yeah, they just don't know Thin Lizzy, man. They just don't know him. I appreciate you. Zeppelin, of course, man. John Bonham. I don't know if anybody has seen. I can talk all day and night about Led Zeppelin, one of my favorite bands ever. Obviously, John Bonham's death ended the band, and that's a lot of bands would do that and have that. I don't know if you've seen Becoming Led Zeppelin. I highly recommend the movie. So far, my favorite music documentary of the year. Although I also do love the Pink Floyd documentary that's out. There's a few others coming that I want to see. Well, Pink Floyd's not so much a documentary as it's a concert film with a little documentary, but the Zeppelin movie is unbelievable anyway, just on its own, like the first 3 to 5 years of the band, the first couple of albums and change. But to hear Bonham and speak, interviewed at length on like with deep answers and very thoughtful, coherent stuff about the formation of the band and how he makes music and about how him and Jones play together, and Jimmy and Robert, and how he knew Robert from around the way in Birmingham. Really incredible stuff. And Bonham, still to this day, you could put on a Led Zeppelin record and be like, that's John Bonham. Maybe a lot of people sound like him, but that's him. And you could always tell. He was definitely the linchpin of the rhythm section of the band. But they were all, it's kind of like an Avengers Assemble. They were all pretty incredible. But Bonham's unbelievable. I highly recommend that documentary. And again, Freddie Mercury, man, what just a loss. If you wanted to say Freddie Mercury is the best singer ever in rock music, I would not argue with you. He is technically perfect. He was incredible. He couldn't read music, but he pulled music out of himself, like out of the ether, and made, incredible songs. He played piano like a maestro. He sang beautifully. He could do, high tenor soaring vocals. He had a beautiful voice, almost like a violin note. Like a violinist plays, or a cello, like just an incredible, soulful, beautiful voice. And obviously He's gone a long time now, 35 years since he passed away. And again, you mentioned earlier, Eric Carr passed away the same day as Freddie Mercury, and his death was completely overshadowed. I know it's a thing. It's like one of the few things that Gene Simmons grinds his gears that I back him on. He's like, nobody paid respect to Eric Carr. And he's right. And Eric Carr, sadly died. And Kiss got to continue on with Eric Singer and Peter Criss, and then Eric Singer again. And but Carr was one of a kind. He came in, and we're not going to talk all about Kiss today, but Eric was incredible and deserves a lot of flowers. He's an incredible drumming on the 80s Kiss records is some of the best things about those records. But Freddie was one of a kind. And, Queen is one of the greatest bands ever. It's kind of interesting. My other podcast, the Glacial Musical Podcast, we had done a huge 9-album run of deep dive of every record. And outside of the hits, there's some duds on all those records, which is interesting. But Freddie, man, he really was the cherry on top of the sundae. Chuck. So this has come up, of course, Chuck Schuldiner for you death metal fans. So many great tributes to Chuck. It's really the failure, honestly, like if you don't understand why healthcare needs to be universal and it's a right, it's a human right, Chuck is your case study. Chuck is gone because he had a treatable, operable brain tumor, and he couldn't get it because the surgery or care because he didn't have health insurance and no one would cover him, and he couldn't afford it out of his pocket, even though he made some of the most iconic and great death metal of all time. And I think he was probably moving into some progressive metal. I feel very fortunate that Death to All is a thing. I think Chuck's music lives on in all these great, crazy tech death bands. Left to Die and Gruesome are two bands that are, pure death worship and honor. I think you hear death in a lot of current bands, and a lot of people still are learning at the feet of Chuck and the fingers of Chuck. We have some interviews coming up on the channel, both with Matt Harvey of Gruesome and Exhumed, and also Gus Rios of Left to Die and Gruesome, to talk a bit about Chuck as well. So, hey, Wise Blood Records is here. I'm up late doing a little live stream, pal. I hope you're well. And great lyric writing, great. And evolved as a vocalist from like his early screamy thrash stuff to more pure death metal, right? What a loss. Definitely a guy that was not replaceable, Prince, man, maybe not the first name you think of when you think of this channel or when you think of rock and metal, but Prince was absolutely a rocker as much as he was a funker, a funk master and a maestro of R&B and soul and sex. The guy was an incredible guitar player, an extremely skilled student of rock music. It's clear his influences melded these things all together in a way that had really never been done before. Never truly been done before. He was revolutionary, and that's not just a pun. Prince is unbelievable, and it's such a devastating loss. And I'll share a little anecdote. Ironically, here's a connection, just unironically. Hey, Pike Bishop is here and says Cliff hurt the most. Absolutely. So young, so tragic, so much in front of him. And again, it's very cynical to say that Metallica would have stayed heavy or stayed thrash. Cliff was the guy making them do like Fade to Black and some of Call of Cthulhu and like Orion. And Cliff is the one that wanted them to make concise punk rock songs and not these And Justice for All 9-minute epics. He would have very much been in the camp of the Black Album. Maybe it would have even been softer. Definitely love Cliff, though. Cliff's a huge inspiration to me. I used to play bass, and I had a wah like Cliff and all these things. Prince is incredible, and really, we'll never really know what we could have got. He died so young, and we lost so much. The guy was one of a kind. Absolutely. You can't really say that about everybody on this list, but Prince was absolutely one of a kind. Bowie, man. Bowie hurt a lot. Kind of right after, that year was terrible. Right after Lemmy. And the thing with Bowie is that he was sick for years with cancer and didn't tell anybody outside of his most inner circle. It was not made public. And he just kind of created his final masterpiece record, Black Star, in kind of privacy with his usual collaborators. He knew he was going to perish. He knew he was going to die. And he made this unbelievable record. Bowie really copied and imitated over and over. He was really reinvented himself so many times. Really, there's very few artists you can really compare him to. He had many lives. He cut across 5-6 decades of music, 7 decades of music. And it really hasn't been the same since he passed, you know? It really hurt. Bowie was great. My partner here at Ghost called Omar was at the David Bowie 50th birthday party in New York City in the 90s. And I was like, where the fuck was I? I was probably on drugs. Honestly, alcohol and drugs. Anyway, I was in a fucking stupor. Anyhow, Bowie, another tough one. Pink Floyd, man. Pink Floyd is my favorite band ever. And the death of Rick Wright hit me extremely hard. Rick is the secret sauce that makes the band wonderful. His vocals, his piano, his jazz sensibilities is the prog in the prog rock of Pink Floyd to a great degree. Now, they all are. Rick was just beautiful, man. And I really love how much he's featured in the Pompeii footage, in Live at Pompeii, the album and the footage. They really show him at his craft. You know, he kind of suffered because of the split. He's the person that suffered the most. He was technically fired by Roger from Pink Floyd, and he could never really be hired back officially. So they always paid him like a hired guy, a very well hired guy, very well paid hired guy, but just one of the real legends of classic rock, and just so distinctive and interesting, and really the art of playing beautifully and gently and slowly and patiently, as opposed to, you know, another Keith Emerson passed and Greg Lake passed. Those guys are great, and I love Keith Emerson, and Rick Wakeman is still out there banging around, and John Lord passed away. There's many of them. You know, Rick was one of a kind. He really was very special, and nobody quite sounds like him. And people are still copying his stuff and still copying Pink Floyd to this day. Jimi Hendrix, man, maybe except for Eddie Van Halen, did more for guitar and guitar music than anybody ever. Like, just what he did in a few years to push guitar music forward to the pinnacle, to the lead of all of rock music. It cannot be understated. There are nice little solos in the Beatles music. There are some cool solos in The Who. There are some great solos, even by Clapton on Cream and things. But Hendrix just, you know, reinvented everything. Guitar sounds, recorded guitar effects, guitars themselves, how to be a performer, how to be a showman. His first show in London, the front row was the Beatles and Eric Clapton and The Who, all like mouth open, like a gape. Like they didn't know what they were seeing. Like an alien came down and said, "Take me to your leader." But instead, there was a Beatles record that came out, like Sgt. Pepper came out on a Tuesday, and Jimmy played in London on Thursday and opened with Sgt. Pepper, the song. And the band was like, what the fuck? He bought the record and learned the song, like, in a few days. I'm not saying it's not impossible now, but that's the dedication. That's the talent level this guy had. Another seltzer. I wish it was a beer right now. But, yeah, Jimmy, man, still, I listen to Hendrix records and Floyd records and Zeppelin records and Sabbath and Lizzie, and I still discover new things, you know? I could have put Keith Moon in here, too. I didn't put Keith Moon in here, but that's okay. Who's a little before my time, actually, but good band. Ramones, man, this one also gutted me because growing up in New York City, Bill's Mafia 716 and change says Cornell still hurts. Still hurts, man. I'm with you. Ramones, being a New York guy, I love Ramones. I was never a punk. I was always a metalhead and punk adjacent, but I grew up with a lot of punks and hardcore kids. And I really love the Ramones, man. I love them so much. And especially the one that hurt the most is honestly Joey. Johnny's the guy nobody liked. He was very talented. He could write a riff. Dee Dee was a wonderful disaster. And all the original Ramones are passed. And Joey hurt the most. I really hope that Johnny's wife lets up and allows that movie to get made. I think Pete Davidson is trying to play the role of Joey Ramone. He's obsessed with them. He loves the Ramones, apparently. I think that's interesting. Guy with his star power and comedic ability. I'm sure you could get like a really fun cast to play Blondie and Talking Heads and Wire and Television and Alan Vega and things like that, the CBGB's people. But Ramones, I got to see them a few times. They were unbelievable. And very sad that they are all gone. I really want to get to Berlin someday and go to the Ramones Museum there. Why is there not a Ramones Museum in New York? What the hell? Eddie Van Halen, this one's brutal. Just because he suffered a lot and he was very sick to the end, which I find, very sad. But yeah, Eddie, this is a photo shot again by Evil Rob for Ghost Cult in 2015 on their final, what wound up being their final tour. Man, just really rough. He was so revolutionary and great. Similar to Hendrix, he pushed guitar, the boundaries of guitar. I know people want to say Van Halen was simple, but you don't understand. They could have made more complex music. They were trying to make simple, catchy songs and then show off in the space between. It's so brilliant. It's so essential. He really changed everything. Overnight, people were throwing away their pedals and going over to racks and changing their type of guitars and amps. And really, maybe today's Polyphia and Pliny and Animals as Leaders and all your shreddy people don't exist if Van Halen didn't, and Randy Rhodes, who's coming up soon, didn't kind of push the genre forward the way Hendrix did, 10 years prior. And what a loss. And we lost Van Halen, and Alex has totally got rid of all his drums, and obviously he's old and hurt too, but he lost his love for music because his brother died, similar to Vinnie. Very sad. Peter Steele, Typo Negative, man. The fun part of Typo Negative is I got to see them a few times, but also I could have seen them 100 times, and I was like, these guys play all the time in New York. I'll see them next time. And I would go occasionally. Or they would show up at a festival I was at, like Ozfest, and they were there. But Typo Negative was great. Again, a lot of personal stories tied up to acquaintances and close friends of mine with Peter. By all accounts, a wonderful person. I know he was a complex person, a big fan of Carnivore. Take it for what it is. Somewhat of a unironic joke band. And Peter was just magical. Typo Negative's music is magical. Highly recommend. Probably the closest thing we'll ever get to a Typo Negative. Maybe someday we've heard that both Johnny and Kenny are open to a Typo Negative tribute show. But I think what you should do is check out Sun Don't Shine, which is the new supergroup with Kenny and Johnny from Typo and Kirk and Todd from Down. And they have a new single coming out soon, and the final writing session is taking place now for their debut album, which I think is very exciting, on Corpse Paint Records. I'm very excited about that. But Peter, always close to my heart, man. I love that dude. Neil Peart, this kind of shattered me. And again, it was we didn't know he was sick. And then we found out how sick he was after he died, which is just absolutely tragic. I don't really care for people talking I knew all along he was sick, or I was in the know. And, name dropping a person after they die when they're not around to verify it is a very convenient kind of thing. Very unique to the internet and social media and clickbait things, but very sad. I did not go to the farewell, what became the Farewell Rush 40 tour. I was like, oh, they'll be back in another year. I'll go next year on a new album. And they never came back. But I saw Rush many times. My first arena concert ever was Rush and Kansas at Madison Square Garden when I was in junior high school, which is crazy because I'm fucking old. Rip to the professor. AC/DC, man, just even looking at this picture makes me sad. Highway to Hell photo shoot here. Bon Scott on your right-hand side and Malcolm Young on the left. Malcolm obviously died a few years ago. We might have just seen the last AC/DC US tour. I'm hopeful they're going to announce another bunch of dates, but really, they did what they could do, and it was like 15 dates tops across the country, and that's all they could do. And so, every city got kind of 2 dates or 2 dates close to each other, so people could drive a certain distance to see them. But Bon died. Bon was like the soul of the band, and really underrated as a singer and a front man. And him, Lemmy, and Ozzy used to raise hell. Mark Evans, who was the original bassist, or the original sort of prominent bassist of AC/DC before Cliff came in for like 40-something years. Mark's book, which is I highly recommend. Mark was like, we were waking up after a particular hard weekend of carousing, and we're like lounging on a deck in some robes, and we're looking out at the Eiffel Tower, and Bon looks over to me while we're like soaking up some sun with hangovers and sunglasses on and drinks and smokes, and he goes, I think they got one of them towers in Paris. Bon, we're in Paris. That's the Eiffel Tower. Oh, cool. Gone. But Malcolm was a riff machine and really was the heartbeat of that band as much as anybody. As much as Angus is the face of the band, Malcolm was really the soul. And one of my regrets is I've never seen AC/DC. I wouldn't mind going, but it's not going to be the same without Malcolm. Brian is great and did a great job. Very few bands have succeeded even more after switching singers or having a singer pass away. AC/DC is one of them. I wouldn't argue about Black Sabbath or Van Halen. This is Randy Rhodes' mom, Dee, with Ozzy, Sharon, John 5. I see Zakk Wylde there, some other faces. When Randy was inducted into the Rock Walk in Hollywood 21 years ago. Dee Rhodes has passed away since then. Obviously, Randy Rhodes, at the time of his passing, he probably would have abandoned rock music. There's a Randy Rhodes biography movie in the works. There's an Ozzy movie in the works. Randy, tragically died in that, plane crash. Just brutal. He was so young. He was so gifted. He definitely was rising beyond metal. He probably would have eventually left Ozzy's band to do something else in music. He probably would have been, I think, like a Segovia or a progressive rock musician like a Devin Townsend without the vocals. That's my guess. Really incredible. There's definitely a camp of people who think Randy was ahead of Eddie at that time. But they were very similar, from similar cuts. And he is the shit. He is incredible, the body of work that he left behind. Weiland, here's Scott Weiland, man, absolutely tragic. Velvet Revolver, and of course Stone Temple Pilots. One of the most unique. It's weird, they got kind of smashed a little when they came out, right at the sort of the break of grunge bands in that second wave with Bush and other bands. But really, Stone Temple Pilots is far beyond just a grunge band, or obviously they were San Diego by way of New Jersey and not Seattle, and Weiland is not at all from that area, but he just ended up their singer. Just phenomenal, just a phenomenal singer, a brilliant poetic lyricist, and just a very big tragedy that he passed. And of course, can't talk about these things without talking about the Beatles. John murdered on half of King Crimson. Dude, more than that, I'm so sad about Crimson. Crimson is one of my favorite bands also. And Bill Rieflin died a few years ago. I saw the last full tour of King Crimson with Bill on drums. Sick, man. Just the original lyricist, that's right. And Giles died, and just very, very sad. But, Beatles, obviously John murdered. I was like a little kid watching Monday Night Football because December 8th is not only the day Dimebag was killed and the day that John Lennon was murdered, but it was my mom's birthday. So we were like Monday night watching Monday Night Football and having like ice cream with my mom for her birthday. And then Howard Cosell announces that John Lennon is dead. Obviously, a long time later after that, George Harrison, who had a insane life, like he was so good, and he got to really come into his own outside of the Beatles as a solo artist, and to collaborate with other artists and bands, Traveling Wilburys and things like that. And then he was like, there was like a home invasion in his home in Staten Island, and he was stabbed almost to death. He recovered from that and then died anyway of cancer. But George and John, obviously legends. Beatles, not. I love the later Beatles more than the early Beatles, and I think some of the Beatles solo stuff equals the Beatles. But we still have Paul and we still have Ringo. Those guys are both 80 something, which is wild. And of course, the biggest band of the last 25 years is Slipknot, and they've lost 2 of their founding members, and they're still going on with sometimes Clown and just Clown and Corey. And I think Clown is not participating in some of Slipknot's headline tour stuff right now because he's got some family problems. But obviously Joey died 4 years ago, and Paul 15 years ago, and it's nice that the band pays it forward and everything they do with those guys. And again, cynical people are like, how dare they continue without those guys that helped co-found the band? Well, they're not here, unfortunately. And apparently, both the estates of those guys have permitted. Oh, looks like the garbage dump is here. Hold on. This is an especially tough one for me, man. Trevor Cernan is a person I knew personally. We interviewed him. The very first Ghost Cult podcast interview was with Trevor. Trevor lived in Brooklyn for quite a time when I also had moved back to Brooklyn from Boston before I moved here to California. Trevor was absolutely wonderful. He did so much for underground metal. So many unknown bands got put on because of Trevor. I mean, really one of the biggest tragedies of the last few years. Suicide is terrible. It leaves people with such a loss, but also like think of how much pain he was in to take his own life. I still miss the guy. He was really good to Ghost Cult. He was always nice to us. And it's rough, man. It's very rough. I get emotional just thinking about it while the garbage is getting picked up in my building. One more second. We now have the unfortunate distinction of having several people that we've interviewed pass away, and one of those people is Riley Gale of Power Trip. Man, it was one of our first big in-person interviews. I watched the band play many shows where they slayed. I once spent a whole night with him at Duff's Alcohol Abuse Center in Brooklyn, drinking and talking politics. Yeah, absolutely, Sheridan. Douglas, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. I'm a big Nitzareb fan. I don't even like writing obituary. I write a good deal of the news on ghostcultmag.com, and I don't like writing obituaries. I'm a trained TikTok is like, we're restricting you for talking about death and unaliving. Great. I'm trying to help people and myself. Anyway, I went to journalism school, so I learned how to write death notices and obituaries, and I don't like doing it. They all hurt to a degree. Riley hurts, man. I sat next to this guy and talked about him being liberal in a red state and what that was like, and how to organize and how to be politically active and not be a douche knuckle and not, have it be part of your musical identity and not ruin your band doing it. So I'm in favor of Power Trip continuing the way they are now. I do believe they're going to sign a record deal and put out new music at some point in the future. That may be controversial, but we shall see. Riley was one of a kind also, and amazing, and just a hugely knowledgeable fan of punk and metal, which I loved about him. Tom Petty, here you go, just 54, died too young. Men, I'm almost the same age that Tom is when he passed, and I have been taking, more serious care of my health the last year and a half. This year has been mostly mental health. Last year was more physical stuff, but I'm doing both in equal measures as much as I humanly can. And, maybe Tom was not paying attention or ignoring certain signs. Maybe we could have got, we never know. He could have got checked out, but it sucks. It super sucks. Thanks again to everybody watching here. Steve Clark of Def Leppard. Man, I should not do these things overnight. Steve Clark, Steamin' Steve of Def Leppard, died of alcoholism. He had kind of stepped down from the band. He was replaced by Vivian Campbell, formerly of Dio and Nasty Savage and a bunch of other bands. And Steve is really the architect of Def Leppard's early success. His rhythm guitar, his songwriting was really the heart and soul of that band for a long time. And it's clear their best material was with Steve. I think everything after Generalize is a big step down. And I like the band a great deal, and I would love to see them again someday. I know most of the show is kind of on tape, but it kind of has to be. Steve was incredible. He's really underrated as a songwriter, and he was, just still. There's a memorial to him in his hometown of Sheffield, England, where the band is from, where Def Leppard is from, and he's still, well regarded in, the scene. Yeah, same thing, man. Same thing, Thrash Man. I agree. And of course, can't have this conversation without talking about Kurt Cobain on the day after Nirvana surpasses 2 billion streams on YouTube. For Smells Like Teen Spirit, of course, which only took them 5 years to get another billion after the first billion. Kurt Cobain, not my favorite Seattle band, not my favorite guy, but inarguably an excellent band that had a profound impact on generations of musicians. People are still discovering this band. Very interesting stuff. For some cool insight about, and I mean, of course, like Mark Lanigan, Seattle's had so many people pass away. I didn't really have a good photo of Mark that I'm able to use, but legally. But Mark is also hugely important to me. Would be one of them. Kurt, I remember where I was when he passed away too. It was a shockwave when he died. It was horrifying. This is kind of the halfway point of the show. So, yeah, once again, if you want to donate some money to us, here's our Cash App on the screen. We also take super chats and super likes. I need to, I'll talk about this more tomorrow, later today on the live stream, about enabling subscriptions and what I plan to do with the subscription model for us. Last month, maybe a month before, Lemmy was unveiled. Yep, I'm going to go someday. Pretty close to where you used to live. All right, Sheridan, checking in from perhaps the UK or from the UK. Nice to meet you. Thanks for sharing that comment. I appreciate you. And I appreciate you being part of this conversation. Doug McCarthy, very sad for me, man. And yeah, again, this is our tip menu. I should update this for tomorrow. But anywho, 2:30 in the a.m. on the Pacific Coast. I got to go to bed soon. But this is almost over. Obviously, again, beside Douglas, Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys passed away, or announced he passed away today. Sly Stone earlier this week. I don't know if you're MTV watchers of like the last 25 years. Ananda Lewis passed away from breast cancer, or after a bout with breast cancer. We're losing people left and right. And listen, Brian, Slash is from there. That's dope. Stoke-on-Trent, right? Killer. Slash and his mom, who Tiny Dancer is about his mom, by the way. Slash's mom. I don't know if a lot of people know that, but so yeah, man, Sly Stone. We're losing a lot of our heroes, and I'm really worried about Ozzy. I know I had a picture of Ozzy earlier with the Randy Rhodes plaque. Really, really concerned about Ozzy. Like, he even said, I hope I can even, I'm trying my best to get into shape to do a few songs, but can I even do it? I don't even know if I'll make it. Like, that's upsetting. I'm not ready to live without Ozzy, man. You don't know. Here's another couple of ones, just a few more to run out the string on this. Nick Mensah, there's a documentary about Nick coming out. This Was My Life by Ellefson Films, made by David Ellefson, his former bandmate in Megadeth. This picture makes me happy and sad, Nick being Nick at the NAMM show, and the taker of this photograph, Melina Delarangio, who worked for Ghost Cult, died just a few months after Nick died, a few months after this photo was taken. So this photo was taken in January 2016. Nick passes away, has a heart attack on stage in LA at the Baked Potato, dies. Melina passed away a few months later, just a terrible chain of events that always kind of are forever linked for me. But Melina was wonderful. We've had some wonderful staffers that lost their lives with us. And I, again, am very fortunate to do what I do and know the people I know. Mitch Lucker of Suicide Silence died terribly. Was nice. I met him a few times. I wasn't the hugest Suicide Silence fan, but the band has continued on with Eddie Hermida from All Shall Perish, and Mitch, by all accounts, was a nice guy and a real big booster to the scene and smaller bands. Not sure if any of y'all out there were fans. Reed Mullen, this is another one. I love Corrosion to Conformity. And Reed Mullen, this is one of the last times we ever covered him, and he died. He also had some demons, but his health kind of gave out on him before he could turn his demons around. COC is an incredible band, and I love his drumming. And he was I don't know how many people are legends across a few different genres, but in terms of stoner doom, stoner rock, thrash, and punk, Reed is one of those dudes. He definitely was a great dude. I have a picture of me and him somewhere on one of my other accounts. This is a thumbnail from YouTube. I was just like, this is a very common photo people have of Dead and Euronymous from Mayhem, right? Dead took his own life. We've seen Lords of Chaos. We read the book. I wish someone had killed Varg instead of Varg killing Euronymous. But, you know, you can't have first wave black metal without these guys. And whatever you think about Mayhem today, the entire black metal scene owes these two guys specifically. Dead was incredible, one of a kind as a vocalist too, and he probably would have developed even further had he not died. And you know, you never know. Euronymous might have, you know, come back to the band or rekindled the band at some point. Jimmy the Rev Sullivan of Avenged Sevenfold died in 2009. It's hard to believe it's going to be 16 years at Christmas time. Guy was incredibly talented, only 28 years old when he died, and really was the brains of that band for a long time. I saw Avenged Sevenfold a few times with Jimmy and a few times since without, and I appreciate that they pay tribute to him in multiple ways, multiple songs. Probably some of the best fans I've ever seen ever is Avenged Sevenfold fans. I know that may sound like a surprise to you all, but I really do think they have some of the best fans. Queen Purple Unicorn has passed by. Hello. Lynyrd Skynyrd, this is not that album. This is the debut album, so it's not this exact band that had the plane crash, but obviously, you know, we lost many members of Lynyrd Skynyrd in that fateful plane crash after Street Survivors and that prophetic album cover, but Lynyrd Skynyrd managed to continue on to this day with a different cast of people. And, you know, they turned tragedy into a positive story, which is admirable. Lynyrd Skynyrd, who knows what more great music they would have made, you know, if that crash had not happened. Chuck Mosley, I'm a huge Faith No More fan. And Chuck is the original singer, or the best-known original singer of Faith No More, obviously on Introduce Yourself. Clearly, Patton comes in and rejuvenates the band to a different level, but, you know, what a great vocalist and a fun frontman he was, and really encapsulated the spirit of the early band, especially, whether it was his lyrics or Roddy's. So, yeah. Rest in power, Chuck. Eddie Leeway died just recently. Leeway is one of the most inspirational and original hardcore and crossover thrash bands ever. Just very sad. Eddie's health problems caught up with him after many years. We also lost Todd Youth, who was one of my favorite interviews ever. I didn't really have a handy picture of Todd, but the guy was a beast as a songwriter and a beautiful person. I miss that guy also. This is the statue of Stevie Ray Vaughan in Austin, Texas. I've never been to Austin. Tell me if you're from there or have been there. You know, Stevie Ray kind of was hailed as the second coming of Jimmy in a lot of ways, at least as a bluesman. He was, you know, likened to Page, Clapton, and Beck for his guitar prowess, and he died tragically in that helicopter crash. in 1990. And he's still revered in Texas for his playing, his blues playing. VTech from Decapitated. There's quite a few death metal people on this list, of course. We talked about Chuck. I think the tragedy of VTech dying so young and after really doing a masterpiece, I don't know one death metal head that can't name Spheres of Madness and that riff. We may have some concert footage of that coming up soon here in the channel on YouTube. I'm glad Decapitated got to continue with their career with Vogue, his brother, but what a loss again to lose your brother and could carry on without him. Just such a young guy, just very young, 23 years old when he died. Here is Joy Division and Ian Curtis in the center. A little bummed to see Joy Division / New Order not get in the Hall of Fame this year, but fuck the Hall of Fame anyway. Ian Curtis, really special as a frontman and lyricist and vocalist. And we really didn't get to get his full bore of talents. I do recommend seeing the Joy Division movie that's out there. I thought it was pretty well done. This is Valfar from Windir. Windir is one of the original second wave Norwegian black metal bands and such an important band. Windir, I forget what it means in folklore in Norse. It might mean blizzard. I'm not sure. But what an incredible band. Terje Valfar Bakken is his name, and members of Windir went on to front Wright and Mistur and Scorpily. This guy was incredible. Windir is a band you definitely have not heard enough of, and you need to go and check out if you love old school black metal. I just found this is heartbreaking. So one of my favorite industrial metal bands is God Lives Underwater, and this is David Riley, and I just found out going down like a rabbit hole about God Lives Underwater, which I listen to all the time, literally every week, and I just now realized that he died like 20 years ago. Just what the fuck. Put out tons of music, mostly unknown, produced and remixed a lot of other people, was signed to Rick Rubin's American Recordings, and they had a couple of hits and MTV hits even in the post MTV hit age, and then he just kind of vanished. Very sad. Then a few more people who are not rock or metal, but just maybe they touched your life or maybe their music was important to you. Obviously, Biggie Smalls and Tupac, the two polar opposites of hip-hop in the 90s. I'm personally more of a Tupac person in terms of quality and talent, but Biggie was hugely important. I'm from the East Coast. Pac is also originally from the East Coast, but he's obviously associated with West Coast rap. Amy Winehouse, phenomenal voice. I host some karaoke every Sunday, and a lot of people sing a lot of Amy Winehouse stuff. So I've kind of gotten a new appreciation for her talent. She was always, I thought, a great vocalist, but I wasn't listening to a lot of pop music back, 15, 20 years ago. I was really just listening to what I listened to, and I like a lot of stuff that's not pop. I didn't mention any jazz artists here, and I have an encyclopedic knowledge of all eras of jazz, and I didn't bring up anybody that I could have. Body Count has lost a ton of band members. I didn't mention them. There's a bunch of people we didn't bring in, but Selena is hugely influential and important. She would have been probably by now on the level of a Taylor Swift or a Beyonce had she not been murdered. Very sad. Sinead O'Connor died recently. Again, very sad. Tragic and hard-fought life, and a really amazing singer and spirit and soul. And just gone too soon. Too good for the world and gone too soon. And George Michael, not at all rock or metal, but honestly a personal favorite of mine. I love George Michael to a level you can't understand. And just an incredible singer, and I never got to see him. That was my bad. So I'll leave on that note. That is the show. Again, if you're watching this now, if you're watching this on a replay, leave a comment on our socials, wherever this video shows up for you, wherever you've watched this. Tell me your most heartbreaking death in rock and metal, or not rock and metal, whatever. There's plenty. Zappa, Andres Segovia. Maybe it's Beethoven, you know? Maybe it's Janis Joplin. Maybe it's Jim Morrison. The 27 Club. Maybe it's Kurt Cobain. Lane Staley. Absolutely. Lane was at the top of the show here. Thanks for chiming in there here late. I appreciate you. It's overnight here on the West Coast. I'm going to go to bed soon. Thanks for watching. You could spend your time with anybody. You hung out with us. We are ghostcultmag.com. Check us out. We are the not sucky metal sucks. We're the not catty blabbermouth. Check us out every day for rock and metal news, interviews with bands you care about, and rock and metal festival coverage. I will be back later today at about 14 hours with our weekly 1 hour or more live stream show where we talk about rock and metal news. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Peace.